see the world through open eyes and savor all the time before it flies. And every time you wake up, there's a new day that's calling out your name. Come join the game. Well, that's life. Take what comes along the way. That's love. Let it grow stronger every day. There's joy as the days go passing by. There's hope, a better life for you and I. We take our dreams and fly. Together we can try. That's life. Well, some things in this world were meant to be, like living life in peace and harmony. So follow where the road will lead you. Hand in hand we'll make our dreams come true. Enjoy the view. Oh, that's life. Take what comes along the way. That's love. Let it grow stronger every day. There's joy as the days go passing by. There's hope, a better life for you and I. We'll take our dreams and fly. Together we can try. That's life. Together we can try. Oh, that's life. We'll take what comes along the way. That's love. Let it grow stronger every day. There's joy as the days go passing by. There's hope, a better life for you and I. We'll take our dreams and fly. Together we can try. That's a life. I feel so alive, yeah. I'm happy head to toe. I'm in overdrive. We're alright. Clear those clouds away. I can feel the sun, yeah. Let the music play. Now we've just begun. I'm ready, 'cause these are the best days. These are the best days. These are the best days of our lives, of our lives. There's magic in the air, and it feels so right. Yeah, yeah. So follow if you dare, and you'll see the light shine so bright. 'Cause these are the best days. These are the best days. These are the best days of our lives, of our lives. Yeah. Oh, can you feel the spotlight shining on down? Yeah, it's alright. Live in the moment and find your place in this world every
as colleagues, and 3rd through 10th or some other ones that you can make up in your head. So we have with us here Glenna Norvell from G4 Strategies to help facilitate this conversation. We've allocated, I'm going to say about 50 minutes for this work. Welcome, Glenna. And are there any questions or comments folks want to get on the table before we turn it over to Glenna? All right, the floor is yours.
Where's my Britney Spears mic? Hi, everyone. It's good to see you again. I've seen a couple of you a couple of times this week, so it's good to be back here. And as Stephanie shared, our work today is really to revisit your conditions for winning that you created back in December. And let's see. Oh, aim it there. There we go. To reflect and review the practices, what we're calling conditions for winning, of how it is that you come together as a board and how it is that you work together so that you can forward the vision and the mission of the district. So in your packet, we ask you to do some reflection on, can you all see this somewhere? No, because Susan's up, so I'm not even sure this makes a difference. You saw in the presentation? Okay, good. So is to share a specific example of where you or one of your board colleagues actually exemplified one of the conditions for winning, and I put those in front of you. And just to take you all the way back to December, what we talked about at that point were the components of thriving teams. And that's literally the word that I've been using for a couple of years now. So it's so fitting that you all are using that word as well. This notion of thriving and how it is that you all come together, do your work together. What are the conditions aligned to those components, which were psychological safety, dependability, clarity and structure, and roles and structure, expectations, and then meaning and impact. So you all came up with that list. And we want to both reflect on what it is, how you've been doing, so if you can share concrete examples of that, but then also we want to review them. Like, are there ones that are missing? Are there ones that you can lose because they're similar? Are there ones that you want to double down on, you really want to continue working with, and you want to really sort of strengthen your practice around that? So I'm going to start with asking for some examples of where it is that you all have lived consistent with those conditions for winning. So you've exemplified them.
Well, I don't mind going first, and I was trying to think, because the way that the question was written, I was thinking of like individual people, and then I started thinking about how successful it is when the whole board sort of exemplifies that thing. And I have greatly appreciated, under meaning and impact, a consistency around explicitly linking the conversations we have, the priorities that we have, to students. It feels like a very genuine and consistent and clearly shared interest, and sort of grounding among board members that has made it, to me, I think, easier to frame when things come up in that student focus, to allow for, just to bring forward those shared interests, even if we get there in slightly different ways.
Very great. Who else? Susan? I want to make sure, I'm not calling on you, but I just want to make sure that I'm including you in the conversation.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I would echo what President Schooley has said. I'd also appreciate, or say that I appreciate that I think President Schooley has also checked in pretty faithfully with all of us to see if we are, kind of on the same wavelength in terms of the discussions that we want to be having at the board table. And I think that has been very productive this year, especially in light of so many moving pieces. I would also add that the budget is starting to align with strategy and outcomes, meaning that we're really starting to dig down deep, I think, into really the challenges that are before us, knowing that we have literacy and numeracy, mathematics coming down the pike, and how we're going to be serving, once again, going back to the needs of children, once again, going back to how we focus our dollars to serve our children. And so I think that those two practices have been beneficial as well.
Very great. Thank you. Who else?
I would say that that looking for shared interest really showed up with our vote on backing the legislation around flavored nicotine vaping. That we had, one member of the board say this is something that's important, and we all were kind of like, you know what? I think we can all get behind that. And so just right then and there, we did with a unanimous vote. And so I think that was a good example.
So actually looking for starting a conversation with what is it that you share? What is the interest that you have? What's the shared commitment that you have? Very great. Thank you. Please.
Under the section of leveraging the expertise of board members and appreciating contributions, I really think that we've all put forth our own experience and our observations from our perspectives, whether it's our careers or our current state in life, whether we have children right now in school or we're a school teacher. So I really appreciate that. And I also like the fact specifically for Director Miller that she has such expertise in school governance strategy and facilities management. And so when she questions some of the agenda items that are coming up, and so then we get the presenters to add to their presentation more details, it really helps me as a new board member.
Very great. Thank you. Please.
Okay, I'm going to pick calling out elephants in the room. Like, I will do it right now. It's kind of awkward to talk about these things in front of an audience and do it this way. So that's an elephant in the room. But actually, we, in our retreats together, I think have had success at being able to say things that might feel awkward in that moment or not aligned so that we can bring them forward and get aligned around them. So I thought that was surprisingly helpful and successful, I think. So I was really encouraged by that. The other one, circling back with a person when you have an issue and have a conversation, I've really appreciated. I have a lot of questions, and both from staff and then our board, the conversations I've been able, the check-ins and the talking through things one-on-one together has been, in terms of following up and clarifying, has been really great in our relationship building, I think, to be able to go forward and work together as a group.
Director Harda, I so appreciate you actually calling out today's elephant in the room, because we were talking about that, and this is the first time I've facilitated in this way in a public forum with a team. So it definitely, it is a different dynamic, and the opportunity is, if you can role model that in this room for others, is that this has, a greater impact even beyond just with the five of you. So thank you for pointing that out. Anyone else? All right. I put this one up here because given that you're in the middle of strategic planning, I thought it was important just to point out the connection. And this is the way we think about this, is that your conditions for winning is really sort of the ropes. If your vision, your strategic vision is the why, and the what are the outcomes, and the how is your strategic plan, the actual implementation. Well, the plan is actually the bridge between the why and then your outcomes, and your conditions for winning are sort of your guardrails or the ropes that you use. And while you all were sharing examples of where you exemplified, you were aligned to, and you were living true to those conditions for winning. There will be times where you don't, and you have trip-ups, and you have challenges, and these serve as sort of those guide ropes to be able to support you in working through that. So you have in front of you and up on the screen are the conditions for winning. And when you look at them, what sort of just really broadly, what's the first thing that you notice?
Well, I think one of the first things I noticed is that there's a lot in here around relationship development and the importance of having a way to be to disagree and not be disagreeable, if that's the case, or to be collegial and be able to do the work that's really important to do. But there are a lot of pieces in here that are really around that importance and how central the relationships need to be in order to have that trust and sort of foundation for being able to have real, true dialogue and work done together.
Yes. Thank you. What else? What else do you notice when you look at these?
Lots and lots of communication. Like almost every other one talks about in ways which we can communicate better and together.
Very great. And I don't know if you remember, but so you have psychological safety, dependability, structure, clarity, meaning, and impact. And on the graphic that we used, the through line on all of those was communication. That was actually the thing that sort of links all of this. So, and is critical, is at the core of each one of these building blocks. And they are where you can both sort of prevent breakdowns, but also you can work through those breakdowns. And I think that is, again, a reason for actually explicitly articulating these are the things that we both align to and commit to. So it's important, that last part is the commitment, like I'm saying yes to this. What else do you notice? Please, Director Reed.
I noticed there's some things that we haven't done. And so I'm wondering, are they important to us, or, what do we want to do with that? We talked about the beginning of a meeting with one or two high schools. We do check in, I think, with events. I'm trying to remember what we meant by that. If that was like the board report talking about, we don't necessarily do weekly check-ins between board members, but certainly monthly, because Stephanie, you always call us before meeting to see how we're feeling about things, and then that sometimes there's other times that we check in. So I don't know that we really need weekly. I think we threw that out there. It sounds like we opted not to go with a process observer, and I don't think we've needed one. I think it's gone just fine. So there are just some things that I noticed that just didn't organically happen. And so I'm wondering if that was something we wanted to revisit, or if it's not organically happening because we just really don't need it or it doesn't fit.
And that's perfect, Director Reed, because you're actually moving us into the next part of the conversation, because one of the things that you have up there under meaning and impact is this notion of continuous improvement and modeling that as a Board of Education. And so we're going to practice that today using a start, stop, continue model. So you can begin to think about explicitly to these conditions for winning, what do you want to start doing that you're not currently doing, that's either on here and you haven't been doing it, or you want to add to it? What is something that you want to stop doing? It's just really, it's either duplicative, or it's just something that you're not going to commit to at this point. You will always have it. You can pick it up at some point. Or it's something that you really say, this is very important and we want to continue doing it, and we actually want to improve upon it. So that's kind of a perfect transition. Thank you for that. One thing I do want to say, there's a lot here. There's a lot of different conditions, right? So it could be something that you want to bring a little bit more focus to and refine. Please.
I'm wondering, 'cause I agree with you that there are some things that have been sort of elevated and done, and some things that haven't. I also feel like, one of the benefits of doing something quarterly in terms of a continuous improvement process is to be able to reflect on, okay, where were we when these things were priorities that emerged, right? And are they the same ones now, which is what I hear you asking. And there's a lot, I guess, two things. One, some of this stuff I feel like will be pulled into policy governance, and that's where some of this stuff lives. So the speaking with one voice and a unified message after votes, regardless of how you voted on that particular issue, how you treat people with respect and curiosity. I mean, all of those pieces live in policy, and I think needed to be reiterated in this way as a brand new group starting brand new work together to sort of almost just say, yeah, that is what we believe. So I'm curious how, like, does it need to be articulated here as well as a sort of condition for working? If it's, at what point can you say we agree that is what it is? It is in our governance, documents and the way we should behave toward one another. So right now I understand why it's in both places, but I feel like that may be an evolution of how this list gets refined to something that may be a little bit more specific, I guess, to things that are outside of those broader policy things or behaviors.
Other thoughts?
So can I chime in for a moment?
Please.
I think that there are some things that are already ingrained into to our processes. Like you said, Stephanie, we do have policies that do provide outlines for how we are to interface with each other after votes take place, et cetera. So some of these could roll off, I think, as we start to review these on a quarterly basis. Are we doing this faithfully? Is this already a part of our process? Is this already kind of a part of the fabric as a board that we don't necessarily have to be calling it out to say, hey, we need to be paying attention to this? So one thing, for example, conducting ourselves in a way that expresses, if I'm just going through those four things, those four areas, conducting ourselves in a way that expresses curiosity in what the other person is saying. I think that the board has been provided the opportunity to be able to ask questions back and forth, which has, I think, provided those moments of curiosity where I can ask Ms. Reed, could you follow up on that? I'm not sure I'm following what you're trying to, frame or how you're trying to frame something, so that she can come back and say, well, Susan, I was putting it in this context. So I think we've provided that dialogue at the table, and I don't know if we necessarily have to keep that in that box, but at least it's on the table that we're starting to have those exchanges, which I appreciate. I do think also, I do want to respond back to the beginning of the meeting, one or two high schools check in with events. I think that going down to meaning impact, to respond to Ms. Reed's, raising that as like, what did we mean by that? I think that ties back to what Stephanie and I said that we would try to work on, which was how do we engage the students' voices more at the beginning of our meetings, not just the celebrations of excellence, athletics and arts and academics, but also just hearing how things are going. And I think we wanted to kind of elaborate a little bit on that with how that can be integrated into our conversations. And Stephanie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I think that's part of what we were trying to kind of come to terms with. How do we integrate that into our meetings? And I also think the last part, and then I'll step back, is shared meaning and described impact, that this the work that we do and how it impacts the public. I think we are walking into that thoughtfully with the work that was done by Ms. Varda and President Schooley and Superintendent Dorland, just with the Fitzmaurice community, as a way to show how we should be modeling the work that we do with our community and engaging with our community thoughtfully, and ensuring that all voices are heard at the table as decisions that impact communities are made. So I would think that that would be an example of how we communicate with our public when situations are hard, but we have to do the work, and we were willing to do the work. And I think Ms. Varda, Dr. Varda, and President Schooley and Superintendent Dorland set that example for all of us.
Very great, thank you. So using this frame, what can we improve upon? What do we want to start doing? Because I think Director Miller, you kind of headed us there. Director Reed, you also. What can we improve upon? What do we want to start doing? Either the things on this list or not on this list that won't be captured in policy. What do we want to stop? Like we just realized inside that context of being a baby board, which I love that that's the way you describe a baby board, then, at the time it seemed relevant, but right now it just doesn't seem relevant. Like we don't feel like we need that guardrail. And then what do you want to continue? So we've been having conversations about what it is that you did well, what you want to celebrate with specific examples, and you want to keep, because that is part of, I think, a thriving team. Oftentimes we're always looking at what do we need to improve? What do we need to improve? What do we need to improve? But also pausing and actually acknowledging, here's what we do really well together, and we want to keep doing that. We absolutely want to keep doing that. So using that frame, start, stop, continue, if you were to go back to this and let's just look at psychological safety. What is it that is not on this list or is on this list that you haven't been doing, but you want to start doing? And by the way, the answer to that could be nothing. We've really captured it here. I'll give you just a couple of minutes just to kind of reflect on that, and then when you're ready, you can share out. These are things that you want to start doing that you're not currently doing. Anyone have anything?
I do, if I can reframe
Please.
the
question?
the question, because there's two on here that I want to keep on there just because I feel like they're so important as an ongoing way of working. So it's not that I'm saying we haven't done them, but I would hate to not have them on there. So
do you want to continue?
Yeah. So one is around look for shared interests, particularly in times of disagreement. I just feel like we should all have that tattooed on our foreheads. And then globally. And then the second one, err on the side of too much communication to inform and provide clarity. So as an ongoing reminder that we all need information in different ways. And this is something that, if I was reflecting on sort of my own, what would I want to improve upon for myself, that's part of it, is trying to figure out how to communicate in ways that are unique enough to people and what they need to be able to feel like they can fully engage on this board. Then recognizing that's not always the same way that I would want information. So to me, those two I would maintain just as kind of what is it when you're building a house? The two posts you put in first. Anyways, important things.
Thank you, President Schooley. And I think actually this is a better way to have the conversation. It's just a start, stop, continue. So I'm not going to ask, okay, what do you want to start doing? I actually want to reframe based on where you led us. So what do you want to start, stop, and continue? So we've heard two, we really want to continue. We've been doing it. We want to make certain that we continue doing it. On this first building block of psychological safety. Please, Director Reed.
Well, I would say it is critical that we also continue to call out elephants in the room with respect and empathy. We're not going to get anywhere if we can't talk about, I mean, we've got tough stuff on the table. We better be able to talk about it.
Very great. Thank you. Please.
On the last issue of the conducting ourselves in a way that expresses curiosity, and especially the way Director Miller phrased it, moments of curiosity, that's something I think was missing on the board in prior years, or at least from my experience just watching, that there was not enough dialogue around the table. There was your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn, but we didn't like circle back or have any kind of dialogue going. But I think it's important, especially with the hard issues we have coming up, that we will be able to express more interest in what the other person has said.
Thank you, Director Parker. And I'll like to suggest that in many ways you all are role modeling what it is you want students, the kinds of mindsets that you want to build with students that like curiosity, like genuinely coming at an issue, not already sort of rigid or fixed in your position, but curious about how it is that has impact on students, what are the benefits, what are the potential barriers, and setting that as an example. So thank you for saying that. Is there anything that on there, it's not that you want to stop, like it's not important, it's just that it's already said either in a policy, or is there anything in terms of, if you think about refining this list, which I recommend that you continually look at this list and continually refine it. Is there anything that you want to lose? It's like, yeah, no. Okay.
I mean, I don't want to lose it, but I do feel like we're in a space where being able to focus on looking for shared interests, try to inform and provide clarity, call out the elephants in the room, and then the curiosity piece. The other pieces of that around how do you treat humans, other board members, colleagues. One, it is in policy, but two, I mean, I hope we've demonstrated that we do that in the way in which we interact, and that may not be perfect all the time, but that we treat each other with respect. I'm just not sure we need to continue to have them as something that we need to look at to remind ourselves of.
Another way that you might distinguish between policy and this set of conditions for winning is actually to articulate it as I statements, not we statements, I statements. And why do you think there's power in I statements versus we statements? So in other words, I listen with respect versus we listen with respect. How do you hear that differently? So I listen with respect versus we listen with respect. Well, here's one. One is that language matters. When it's an I statement, it's an individual commitment that you're making individually on behalf of the collective. And it has power in it when you say it as I, because you can own your own behavior. You can't own collectively the board's behavior. You can own your own as a member of that. So when you articulate it as an I statement, there's power in it. So that might distinguish, it's more of a behavior, and it might distinguish it from what's in your policy. All right, let's move to dependability. Start, stop, continue.
I feel like they make clear commitments and keep them. I don't know how we're measuring that. I don't know how we can verify we're doing it.
So that might be a process question. Like, how is it that you all are checking your commitments? Any ideas?
Can I just clarify? Because I'm looking at that and I'm like, well, I don't know. As far as I can tell, we just all do what we say we're going to do. So I don't know if it means something different than that.
Director Miller?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think, you know, there was the conversation in the very beginning back in December when we were talking through a lot of this work, and that was, you know, how do we engage more with our community? And I think one of the examples was we should be having more town halls with our communities, or we should be having, you know, those coffee conversations with either our communities and or with Superintendent Orland and our communities. So that was one thing I think about the commitments that we talked about, Director Reed, was how do we engage in that way and commit to engage in that type of ongoing conversation. That's at least what I recall as an example. And just to stay on that same area where it says email high level of update following agenda prep and review so that we all have knowledge of what's coming up. I think being able to have those planning periods at the end of the meetings are Wednesday or Thursday evening meetings when it's very late, I know. But we do have Helen that's able to come up and everybody is kind of on the same page as to what we're planning and what's coming up into the next planning session. And so I think that has been extremely helpful. And so I don't know if we need to kind of keep it still as an email high level when we're already talking about it at our meetings on Thursday. So I'd be willing to kind of let that one go for the email, since our conversations are pretty explicit on that Thursday with the follow-up of planning with President Schooley and one of the other directors. So that would be my qualifier.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about dependability? Is there anything not on there? All right, let's move to structure and clarity. Start, stop, continue.
So I'll just say, I mean, on this one, the quarterly review and quarterly board reflection sessions, I think may be the same thing, maybe not, which we are beginning. And then the articulation area meetings, I mean, the town hall, and we have had discussions with Ms. Neal around what does that consistently look like, being able to anticipate a schedule for that that's outside of just mission, vision, and values review with our community, but how do we make some consistency with those kinds of things? So that's in process. And so anyway, so that's those three things are in, you know, they're happening now, or they're in process, I should say, which I think is great.
Very great, thank you. Any other thoughts on structure and clarity? Anything missing? Please,
I wasn't
Director
going
Reed.
to say what was missing. I was just going to say, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't had a process observer, and we seem to be doing fine. So I think we can just take that off.
What is a process observer?
It's a person whose job it is at each meeting to watch what goes on and then to provide feedback at the end of the meeting about things like, I noticed that, you know, these people didn't contribute as much. I don't know if that, you know, or I felt like this person got cut off, or, you know, so that if there are issues with the function of the meeting, that you get that into the picture so that you can sort of do that continuous improvement. But our process seems to be going very well with that one.
So, Director Reed, as a follow-up to that, do you believe that you have the building block of psychological safety that you all can act as your own process observers? So you could actually point that out when things do go off track a bit?
Some of it may be just the fact that our meetings tend to be uber formal. And I'm used to being on boards that are less formal, where there is more opportunity for process to go off the rails a little.
So part of the formal structure actually is also a guardrail. Other thoughts about structure and clarity? All right, and in the graphic, meaning and impact are distinct here. We put them together. So inside that last building block of meaning and impact, start, stop, continue. Please, Director Reed.
I feel like I'm talking too much, but I would like to see us improve bringing in student voices, and that was feedback that we got at last night's town hall, that students want to have a voice and want us to hear them. So I would like us to work in a structure where we more intentionally make sure that we do that.
Please, Director Varda.
Actually, I like this conversation a lot better. At first, we talked about bringing them in at the beginning of a meeting, but I think Ms. Miller suggested actually having them come in to talk. Like, it makes me think on our agenda, it would be neat to have presentations or moments where the students are involved in the meeting, not the pre-meeting. I thought at first we were talking about it was more like recognition of students or something in the beginning of the meeting, but I think it's really neat to think about students coming to meetings and having moments where they speak back to us about the things we're talking about. I don't know how to do that, but am I not talking into it? Oh, oops. No. Anyway, so I really like that idea a lot, and I'd love to brainstorm on how we could implement that.
Yeah, and it's a great, I completely agree with you. So Director Miller and Ms. Neal and I, well, really that's an overstatement. Ms. Neal has been doing a whole bunch of research and calling other districts around this idea of a student advisory board, and then how we, not just with that kind of function, but how we connect to ongoing sort of student leadership and student development initiatives that are already happening in the district, how we create a sort of direct linkage with the board in order to inform how are our decisions student focused and moving forward, and then how is that student voice then sort of represented in our convenings. So we have a meeting scheduled at the end of this month to kind of formalize something, and we'll be bringing it to the whole board in May for implementation in the fall.
Fabulous. And that was also something we heard last night, and is a specific sort of request is a student advisory board, and having it be more than symbolic, but truly meaningful. Yes.
Last
Please.
night, was it a student who recommended that? Was there a student at the town hall? Students at the
We
top?
had several students.
We had like
Nice.
7 students.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great.
Any other reflections on what you should start, stop, continue with meaning and impact? So is there an
Okay.
action item on Director Varda as far as, I'm sorry, I'll come back, in terms of that, the beginning of the meeting, how it is that you think about it, or is that linked to the student board? Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one who made that mistake at the
I
beginning.
called you Miss Miller. Has the action step taken care of?
Okay, very great. Please.
I
President
was just
Shuley.
going to say, moving forward, I do feel like the that there is some work that would be really beneficial that we can still do as a board around communication to the community externally. So how are we sharing priorities that we are bringing to our agendas and why those things end up on our agenda, and helping to better inform the county broadly, but parents and community members around the work of the board. Because I think then, one, I think we should just be communicating as much as possible. But two, I do think it hopefully can help with some engagement in terms of people really understanding what we're focused on. And so when things come up, hopefully then there's a little bit of that giving the benefit of the doubt, like, okay, this board has been in touch with me, has been keeping informed. I understand why these are their priorities moving forward. Difficult conversations are coming up for us. And I just feel like without that intentional linkage, that intentional communication, we are doing a disservice to ourselves as a board and to the community to be able to engage with us that way. So to me, that I noted as like, I want to make that a bigger priority.
Thank you. Please, Director Miller.
Can I follow up on that? I think the 4 town hall meetings that we're having, where we're reaching out to our different communities, and ideally, having them come to us. I don't know how many people attended last night, and I'm not sure exactly how many were at Columbine with Mary's leadership down in that space. I do know that those meetings have in the past been a struggle to gather individuals to come and join us. And it's, everything from, this is the crazy time of year, baseball started for little kids, and soccer and lacrosse and outside games. And, it gets into this very busy season. And so are there ways to think about leveraging, this experience, the Zoom calls, where we would have maybe 2 board members from, and still maybe kind of keep it in our different district areas, but afford people the ability to come to us through the internet. And I know that's not necessarily the same as a face-to-face conversation, but I know Miss Director Schooley and I did that. Gosh, Stephanie, it was back in the spring of 2020, and we had a number of people that would join us for a couple of the conversations that President Schooley and I set up. And so I'm just wondering if we could figure out complementary meetings, this in person, as well as then also maybe in this type of dialogue. And so it allows people to join us, not from, not having to drive, but from the comfort of their home after they've made dinner or gotten back from whatever activities they've had to navigate as parents and as community members. So that would just be another option. How do we leverage our Zoom world? I mean, I don't want to make more Zoom calls. I don't, but I'm just thinking that it might be an idea.
I just want to second that, because I especially as we do this regional opportunities work, like on my school visits this week, for every principal, I was like, let me talk about this for a minute. And I would ask them, what are you thinking when I say those words? Like, this is the work we have to do, because I think there's going to be a lot of communication that we have to do to help people understand the work that we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think I want to make sure that we're doing that with not just principals, but community members and students. So I think, Director Miller, I don't want more Zoom calls either, but that increases accessibility. And I just think we really, really need to get that voice. And I don't care if it's Zoom after Zoom. I think it's worth it. So I'd like to see us do more of that, especially in these coming months. Yeah.
Very great. Any other final thoughts on meaning and impact? Okay. All right. So a little individual reflection here. The question is, what is one condition that each of it's not to say you're not going to focus on all of them, but one that maybe you'd forgotten about and you know it's important and you want to give it increased attention. What's one condition that you personally are going to commit to over the next quarter of really practicing so that when you come back in a quarter, you can say, yep, I did that. And then you all collectively as a board can say, yep, we did that. So I'll give you just a minute.
Just in the interest of time, I'll just go ahead and get us started,
Please.
and then because I know Dr. Miller has to a hard stop. One that I'm hearing loud and clear, and that was on in my little notepad, is to really work to set up the structures that allow for that engagement, communication. So whether it is thinking about how do we anticipate for the 22-23 school year and get some of those pieces in place for community engagement, conversations, opportunities to be with our superintendent, talking to people, and also anything that we need as a board that for me personally, can do to help support just continuous board engagement as well. So those pieces, creating the structure for really robust communication and engagement, that's my priority.
Thank you, President Schooley. Who else? Thank you, Director Parker.
Well, I am committed to working more on the student focus work and linking our work that we do here to students. So I want to always be asking myself, every discussion we have, how does it tie back to students? And also asking myself how I can go out to schools and figure out from that side up, am I on the right track? I'm coming from the top down. I want to go from the bottom up as well.
Very great. Thank you. Who's next? Please, Director Miller.
I think I would really like to be focusing hard on the budget and how it aligns with our strategy and outcomes. I think echoing what Director Parker just raised, which was the impact of, how is it impacting our students? All of our budgetary decisions and forecasting is going to not only impact our students, but our communities as well as a complement to that work. And we have some very, very challenging decisions to be made over the next 12 to 18 months. And so I think we need to always be asking, how does it impact our students? Definitely. That should be always at the forefront. And then how does the work impact the long-term strategy from an investment perspective of the decisions that we're making, that we are supporting the strategy to move forward. So we're all, as I think Superintendent Dorland has said, we all know the 2 or 3 things that we're all supposed to be working on, and that ripples through our entire community. So that's what I'll be kind of redirecting myself on a regular basis.
Thank you, Director Miller. Please, Director Reed.
In terms of the community engagement, I've really been trying to make sure that I get back to parents when they email to the board, or community members when they email to the board, and so that will continue to be a focus, because there have been times that things have slipped between the cracks, and I try not to have that to happen, and to be available to people when they, I return phone calls and I meet with people when they want to sit down and have coffee, and that's something that I plan to continue to do, and I would like to add to it the Zoom meetings and the other opportunities to engage with folks.
Thank you. Please.
I like all of these. So I will focus on shared messaging just in general. I think being a voice of our board together in the direction that we're going and the work that we're doing, and helping people know that we're in it together and that the 5 of us are working really hard in alignment and in step is important, I think, for me and our board. And so I'll continue to focus on that and also try to figure out how to say those things in ways that lots of people understand. So without jargon and without lots of things that make it difficult for people to really just understand what we really mean when we say these things.
Very great. Thank you. One last thought. When you have a set of values that are complete and aligned on, one of the activities that you might consider is crosswalking these behaviors to those values. So excellence, focus on students. I don't have them all committed to memory. Integrity, belonging, equity. So we started with a frame of the building blocks for thriving teams, but you might consider crosswalking, okay, how are our behaviors aligned to the values? Thank you all very much. It's always a pleasure to be in front of you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Glenn. I appreciate it. So I'm so excited. The board now begins its annual dialogue with the District Accountability Committee leaders and is going to receive updates on the SAC survey, specifically the budget recommendations for FY23, District Unified Improvement Plan process, and the Family School Community Partnership work, charter school reviews, and any other DAC updates. As you guys join us up here, sorry, Glenn, I just was like, and you're kicked out now. That was an unceremonious dismissal. So rude. Sorry. My mom would be so ashamed right now. Okay. You guys, I know. I always get so excited to see Dak, then I just lose my mind for a second. Okay. So as you guys get seated, following the work of the DAC Budget Subcommittee, the full District Accountability Committee, DAC, reached agreement on its 22-23 budget recommendations at its April 5th meeting to be shared today with the Board of Education in compliance with state statute, CRS 22-11-302, 2016. In addition, the DAC subcommittees, the DUIP, Budget, Family, School, and Community Partnership, and Charter Review will provide updates on their work. The DUIP subcommittee provided its recommendations to the board in fall 2021 at the October 21st, 2021 board meeting prior to the board's action on the DUIP in compliance with state statute, CRS 22-11-302. And the DAC Executive Committee, so we've got, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves actually, so that you can tell us all of the important things you're doing. You all, my understanding, board members, is that this group welcomes our direction for any of the future DAC work in the 22-23 school year. We have about 45 minutes for this conversation, so I'm going to turn it over to you all. I'm so excited to introduce yourselves, and then the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. We really are excited to be here and have a dialogue with you. It's been interesting 2 years, actually, for all of us. And so, but we are really, really excited to be here and have this dialogue. We appreciate doing this during your study session. I think we find it much more valuable than, to have dialogue in this respect. And so thanks for having us on your agenda today. So, all right. So as you know, the DAC is a district accountability and advisory committee, like you mentioned. And so it represents parent representatives from all articulation areas of our school district, charter school, option parents, PTAs, and members of the business community, as well as district staff. And so we do recommend on a number of things. As you know, the district budget, we recommend on, I better put these on here. Parent and community partnerships and engagement, as well as charter schools and DUIP, and among many, many other things. And so our executive committee is sitting right here. And we are, again, excited to be here. And I am going to allow everybody to introduce themselves in the beginning here so you know who we are. And we'll go from there. I am Karsten Engebretson, the chair of the committee. I've been on DAC for, I think, 8 years now. And so this is my last year for chair because of our bylaws. My daughter's graduating, and so from Dakota Ridge High School, and I won't have a child in Jeffco anymore. So, but I am all about Jeffco, and we'll be here to support as well as work with the transition of whoever takes over, and we'll go from there. So, all right. Oh, Laura, go ahead.
My name is Laura Velopoldi. I am the vice chair of DAC and the chair of the budget subcommittee. I have 2 kids in Jeffco, one at Manning Middle School and one at Ralston Valley High School. And just very happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Sure.
Okay.
We're introducing.
Yeah.
I'm Therese Rednor. I am the chair of the area articulation representatives, and I have a kiddo at Everett Middle School. He's an 8th grader. So thanks for your time.
I never needed that close. Hi, I'm Evie Hudak. I'm a board appointee. I'm the chair of the Family School Community Partnerships Subcommittee, and I have this wonderful pin. Ask me about FSCP. And my daughter long since graduated, but she went to all Jeffco schools.
Hello, I'm Jill Fellman. I can't tell. Is it on?
Yeah, you got to push
No, it's not really green.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I'm Jill Fellman. My kids graduated from Ralston Valley High School millions of years ago in the days of the dinosaurs. And I now have grandchildren that unfortunately Jeffco schools. They're all over the board. But anyway, I'm one of the co-chairs of DUIP and am excited to talk to you about that.
Hi, I'm Lori Avery. I'm a board appointee parent, and I have 2 kids. One is 18, and she's graduating from Lakewood, the IB program. And then I have a special needs child also, so I have an extreme situation at my house. I've been on the board for 4 years, and I've been co-chairing the DUIP committee with Jill for 2 years.
Afternoon. My name is Jeff Baucom. I am a student at A West in high school, but I also have a student at Lincoln Academy. I currently serve as on the board of Lincoln Academy as well, and chair as you would guess, the charter school committee.
And hello, members of the board. Dan Cohan. Hello, Superintendent Dorland as well. Dan Cohan, and I have the great privilege of working with DAC Executive Committee as well as full DAC, and try to facilitate their work and their needs from the district.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And we are going to start this off with our FSCP committee chair, Senator Evie Hudak. So, go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to cover with you what we've worked on this year, what we're recommending to the board, and what we're going to work on in the future. So what we've done this year, we started off preparing the agendas and the presentations for DAC orientation on August 10th and the SAC kickoff on August 24th. We ensured that the SAC kickoff included breakouts by articulation areas, and then we reviewed the reports that the articulation area representatives, AARs, what they recorded from their breakouts. We asked Dan Cohan to present to our subcommittee about the district's effort to promote the coordination between the DUIP and the school's UIPs. And we had Carol Eaton present to us about what's in the FSCP section of the DUIP so that our subcommittee could coordinate with the district's efforts to accomplish the FSCP portions of the DUIP. That's a lot of letters. Okay.
We met virtually most of the year, so we changed our meeting dates and times to accomplish that. We always analyze all the surveys that are given, and it's been a little late this year for a lot of those, but we did get to analyze the results of the Family School Partnership Survey, which is obviously the one that's most applicable to our subcommittee. And we noted that, as usual, the areas that were the lowest scoring are always and still Standard 4, speaking up for every child, all the questions in that area, and Standard 5, sharing power. Unfortunately, this year there was a drop in Standard 1, welcoming all families, but we believe that's because of the pandemic. We broke into 2 subcommittees to work on 2 key things that we wanted to accomplish. One of them was to create a marketing campaign to help SACs get parent members. And you will receive this handout later, but we did put together what might be a poster that schools could use to put up and advertise the School Accountability Committee. And it says, as part of our School Accountability Committee team, you will have a say in school spending, school improvements, and other school decisions. No dues, fundraising, or obligation. Just join the conversation. And so we used a lot of the language that we got from research that was done by a national family engagement group to put words in like team, which parents find appealing. And then we looked at best practices from Title I schools, because all these schools have a family engagement liaison, and they work really hard to engage parents who are not usually represented on SACs and who might not speak English. And we came up with some ideas, so we're going to have a few recommendations from that. And we also made recommendations for some questions to be included in the SAC survey, one of which was, are you familiar with the district's family engagement policy, KB? And we put a link in it. And I know on my SAC, when we got to that question, everybody clicked on the link and read it, and then they answered yes. I imagine that's probably the case in a lot of places, but I would ask you to review KB policy also, because we feel in our subcommittee that it's our job to do that. I know my time's running low. I'll try to make it fast. So a lot more needs to be done to get parents on SACs. There are SACs that are dysfunctional, non-functional, have hardly any parents, and we've been focusing most of our effort in that regard. And we have some things that we would ask you to allow us some information that we could access. So when you get the handout, there's a whole list of things that would help us in terms of contacting schools and helping them improve the family engagement on their SACs. And we also have a request regarding AARs, but I think I'll let Therese cover that because my time is almost up. I just want to say what we're going to work on in the future, which is next year, assuming I'll still be on the DAC. I think I have a 2-year term, so I will, right? And maybe continue to be the chair of the FSCP. I cannot be a chair or vice chair of the DAC because I do not have a child in the schools right now. I'm a community member, but I can chair a subcommittee. So SAC members said that they need better training. So we're going to plan the SAC kickoff this year to try to help provide better training for them and work on strategies to get more parents to fill out the FSP survey.
Sweet. Okay. All right, Therese.
Oh, you're used to this. I'm not really used to this. I'm Therese Redner. I'm the chair of the Area Articulation Representatives. And there are 17 traditional area articulations in Jefferson County and then 2 additional with the option and the charter, so a total of 19. And what we found this year is that we are also sorely lacking in representation for AARs for every area articulation that we have. So currently we have 26 AARs. We should have 39. And looking at what's happening for next year, we have a list of schools where we have deficits of either both not having any area articulation representatives or at least missing one. So that will be an ask. An ask will be to help us find parents, find principals who can find parents who will be interested and engaged in serving on the as an AAR. Our learnings from this whole year have been all around connection and the difficulty in connecting. And I don't think it's a surprise, and I think we can just look back to March of 2020, and I don't think we need to review that. But it's been difficult connecting with not just AARs, but also our AARs with their SACs. It's been difficult with robust communication because it's all been mostly done via email, and I think we're all pretty tired of email. We haven't had a lot of in-person engaged meetings, so our focus for next year will be, hopefully, if we can, if it's safe, to be in person, to be engaged, to be providing training, but also to be encouraging our AARs to have their own articulation area meeting in person with the high school, with the middle school, and with their representative elementary schools. That has not happened this year. I'm not surprised it hasn't happened this year, but that is definitely a focus for next year because it's a big learning about the lack of connection that's occurred. Let's see. Some of other areas of importance are we're going to be reviewing the DAC bylaws to determine whether or not we think that an AAR needs to be a member of a SAC, because really then you're asking somebody to do double and triple duty, right? And we don't want to be fired from our volunteer positions. Come on, makes us feel bad. We also like to find out, though, this is an ask of the board. How are AARs chosen? I know that there is an application process that closed just on Monday, but we're not really sure how many have even applied and if that information can be perhaps provided to us so that we can have a better understanding of maybe where our deficits will be coming in to next year, so we can maybe be a little bit more proactive in, tapping on the shoulders of possibly engaged parents. We're also looking at different ways of finding potential AARs, reaching out to principals and things like that. But if we could get a sense of who's all applied and who's been chosen through the traditional application process, that would be helpful. And we're working on how to create a bridge between the principals and the SAC chairs to their AAR. Again, we kind of covered that with having in-person meetings. We're also looking at, and wouldn't mind some guidance on whether or not we can provide SACs with templates of potential bylaws. We don't think there's a lot of SACs who might have their own bylaws. And let's see. Yeah, and then we're working on just doing the in-person meet and greet to connect the AARs, the SAC chairs, and principals so that we can kind of create this great bridge of robust communication. So, thank you.
Okay, so now it's my turn. I'm Jill Fellman. I'm one of the co-chairs of DUIP. And I think Director Schooley, you mentioned earlier that, wow, we already approved it in October. Well, guess what? It happens every year. It's kind of like cooking dinner. You want to say, you ate last week. We have to do this again. Yes, every year. And quite frankly, that's been a challenge for us because CDE is striving, all the right reasons, they're striving to make this a cohesive process, but you know what? It isn't working for us. So here's the timeline as we now know and love, and that is that the DUIP is due to CDE in October. That means you'll get it in September. That means, I'm backing things up, that means that in August, the DAC will give its approval. Well, last year in August, we still didn't have the CMAS data. So there's some difficulty. Plus, some of our committee goes off and comes on, and so we have some real challenges. But I want to commit to you, we will make this work. We will find this document, and it will be meaningful. So we're working very hard to align it with the strategic plan with Jeffco Thrives. And I think that's really important. Sometimes we've had to take a step back and say, well, what's going on with this and what's going on with that? And, you know, we have to pause sometimes and make it work. But that is a commitment, and a strong one. We will make this work. And it is going to be aligned, and I'm going to turn this over to Lori to tell you some positive stuff about what we've done this year.
Well, and I do want to add that we're trying to get a meeting with the CDE to just communicate that the timing is really not good because of all that Jill mentioned. So we started the year off approving the DUIP program, and then we immediately jumped into understanding the fall and the mid-year data and looking at trends and trying to analyze the root causes and the possible reasons. Then we were discussing the major improvement strategies, the three main areas of early literacy, secondary math, and post-workforce readiness. And we were lucky enough to have district content experts that came in and met with the DUIP committee to discuss what they're currently doing, and that was very helpful. And we have done our best with a ton of information that felt delayed on a really strange time scale to align the DUIP to the strategic plan, because we want our work to be meaningful. We don't want to just sit here and talk about this. We want it to be helpful to you, and we're working to make both documents have meaning and make them working documents for the schools. So we're going to have a preliminary vote next month, and what happens is half the committee might not come back next year, so then on some people's first day, we're asking them to approve it. We usually get it done, but that's why the timing is bad. But it's all going to work.
So my name is Jeff Bauckham again. I'm from the Charter School Subcommittee. We did not do any formal reviews this year. As you know, there were no new charter school applications. But I thought I would pass along one quick thought just for myself and for my colleagues in the charter school world. I've been pleasantly surprised, and it's been fun actually within the DAC over the last 4 years to engage with, other members of our educational world. And it's been great to have that give and take with them, both as someone who is, actively involved in the charter school that I participate in, but also just be able to hear, best practices from each side. So I guess my thought is simply this. I would encourage this board of directors and the administrative to continue to utilize, the charter school expertise and what we do and really engage with us, as you go through, whether it's the budget planning or obviously now the strategic plan. We have a lot to offer, and obviously we are a significant portion of the population here in Jeffco. We want to participate. We want to be part of the vision that you guys are developing. So I would just encourage you to continue to think of the charter schools as well.
Okay, thank you. Now we have the meat of it right here, the budget part. All right, Laura. And guys, since this is a little more conversational as well, feel free to ask questions as you go and that kind of thing. So all right. So Laura.
Again, Laura Velopoldi, and I will be presenting some information related to our SAC survey, and we'll get into budget recommendations and priorities. Are we going to go through these slides? Okay, the SAC survey slides. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes. So just, he's working on that. Just a little bit of background. The survey has been, and we had a great opportunity actually, and thank you, Dr. Varda, for coming to one of our meetings. Had a great opportunity to speak with a professional and get some feedback, and we're hoping to continue working and getting more support and help and great ideas from you. But the survey is a comprehensive report. This report is a compilation of the data that we received from our schools. The survey goes out to the principals, and we ask that the principals work with their SACs. In some cases, it might have been a full SAC meeting where they discuss the survey. In some cases, because of timing, SACs often don't meet every month. Because of timing, it might have been a couple people working with the principal to submit the results. So we're going to jump in, and if we could go to the slide titled Participation. Here we go. Okay, so it was open for a full month, January 24th to February 25th, and there were 99 participants. Participants are those that answered at least one question. 86 participants completed more than 50%. We would love that to be a lot higher. It's hard to tell if this year it was lower because it's just an all-around been 2 tough years, really. But with 155 schools, we would like to see that response rate a lot higher. So one of the things that we would like to start trying to look into is, why is it low? What are the reasons for that? Yes.
Sorry, I already have a question. So is a participant a school?
A participant is a school, what we get one response per school, but it could be, and there's another slide in here that will tell who's filling it out. So it might have been a principal filling it out with a SAC chair, but it's one, yes. So it's basically, the best way to describe it would be per school. Yes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. And each of those could have been informed by lots of other input, and that varies across all the
absolutely.
Right? That varies across all the schools also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah, and that's good news and challenging news. Some is really good, and
like to really hear from a lot more schools.
Yeah. Thanks.
So yes. And then, so if we can continue on to the general information, that'll show you a little bit to maybe address some of the questions that you might have been getting at, Dr. Varda, is who is working in response to this survey. So when it says principal, that's not a surprise that that's the highest number. That's who our point of contact is at the schools. And then the SAC chairs and SAC members are others that are most often involved in responding to that. And then we can skip all the way to the general. Yes, is this? Yes. Okay. This slide will show, unfortunately, we had a little trouble getting the best efforts out of the vendor who worked on the survey report. And the labeling on this slide is not, this represents all articulation areas, but you're missing, if you see like Green Mountain and then there's like a gap, well, each bar isn't labeled, but I assure you that every articulation area is right.
I was wondering why 2 of my 3 were not on there. I was like, this doesn't feel right.
I assure you.
Thank you.
I spent a lot of time wondering that too.
Great. That's a helpful explanation. Thank you.
So we apologize that it just just didn't get exactly the report we were hoping for. The next slide will show you the level of schools that responds, and this isn't a surprise that 61 of the respondents are coming from an elementary school because we have so many more elementary schools. So this just gives you a general sense of where they're coming from. And then we can, the next several slides, general information and SAC composition and duties, just to respect everybody's time, we weren't going to go through every single slide. It is kind of a long report. But those are what help us and help Evie and her committee and everybody understand where might we need to support our SACs, what additional kind of service we can offer them. If you jump to, let's see, all the way down to, where did we decide? The unit 20. Yes. This is an important, we believe this is a really important question. And this survey question was, did your SAC consider your school's UIP as part of the process in determining your school's budget and spending priorities? Thankfully, 68 out of our 99 or 85% that actually filled out the complete survey said yes, and that's what we want to see. The higher, the better in this category, and that's really important to us because we do spend a lot of time as a budget subcommittee reflecting on what we hear from our DUIP subcommittee. And then I think we can skip to budget considerations. So the remaining slides will focus more on questions that we asked related to the budget, the district budget as well as the schools budgets. And this year, I just want to note too that it created a little more work for us, but I think it was really valuable. We added some open-ended questions, and probably as a professional in the area of data research, if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but it really helped us to hear some very specific information from our SACs. So I'll try to sprinkle in some of that information as we go through. So the first question, number 22. Again, this is a repeat of question 20, really. So we can 67 of the participants engaged in conversation. So school level spending priorities. We asked the respondents to select their top 3 spending priorities. This question, and Dr. Varda shared with us too, it's always a tricky and it can be a confusing question, and we would love some more input on how we can improve upon that. It's really challenging when you have SAC members who might not know a lot about school-based budgeting and understand what the schools can spend their money on or what the district spends their money on. But we really tried to ask the question in a way that it is somewhat general, but to understand where people are focusing most of their thoughts on with respect to school dollars. And we also asked our DAC members these questions in a DAC meeting. And I was really pleased to see that the DAC and the SAC responses were completely aligned. So that actually made me feel pretty good. But number 1, as it has been, I think, for the last probably 5 years, is mental and behavioral health supports. So I just wanted to note that. The other top ones, additional classroom teachers, additional supports for meeting the learning needs of all learners, and additional paraprofessional and aid time.
Can I ask a question
Yes.
on that? So it says click the arrow to specify in the box below. So is that open-ended and did people type in stuff there?
So that was the idea. Again, just there were some challenges with the vendor, and that didn't happen, unfortunately.
That looks like a good idea. I would love to know what people write in there. So
Thank you.
next year.
And hopefully we can get to that next year by improving the process of how this works, which is something that is actually one of our recommendations is to improve the process. So with all budgeting decisions, when you have a finite number of dollars, are trade-offs. And so we asked our schools to help us understand what their trade-offs might be if they were to be prioritizing in other areas. Technology was a big one, paraprofessionals and DTLs. We as a committee found it a little confusing to see that paraprofessionals was on both lists. And the best way we can, I referred to the comments when I was trying to understand that. And the best I can understand, and of course we don't have a comment from every single school, but the best I can understand is that it's just difficult. And when you're trying when you are trying to figure out how to stretch your dollars, and you don't want to lose classroom teachers, you are potentially looking at staff because that's where more dollars are, and so that may be why we see paraprofessionals there. But a huge number of the comments said that they wish they had more classroom teachers or paraprofessionals. So it is a little confusing. This is just sort of a real interesting question. The coronavirus impacts. The answers don't necessarily have a huge bearing on our recommendations today, but it did help us understand, and we felt like we wanted the schools to have an opportunity to say what their challenges were. And you can see by far the most difficult challenge was the inability to find substitute teachers. We had presentations at DAC throughout the year, and we understand that is not solely a budget issue. We don't have people, and staffing issues are a challenge, not just in the substitute area, but in other areas as well. But we felt like it was important for DAC to give the schools an opportunity to express some of their concerns that they had this past year. And then finally, the last slide is we asked the schools to tell us, separating out the student-based budgeting dollars from the district dollars, and funding that comes directly from the district, what the top priorities are. And the respondents told us that mental health, teacher compensation, per pupil funding, and interventions for at-risk are the top 4. And again, those aligned with when we asked our full DAC at a DAC meeting what they thought the top priorities were. Same thing. So we were really happy to see that our DACs and our SACs are in alignment. And so from there, I just want to move to, as a part of your materials today, you did get a document that has some bullet point background information. A lot of those bullet points come from the data from the survey with respect to top priorities and trade-offs. And I just want to add that that we also, as DAC, I mentioned, work with FSCP and DUIP to really understand when we're going to come and talk to you about what we think budget priorities are. We want to be as specific as possible. However, none of us are going through page by page of the entire budget book, but we want to align what our priorities are and what we would hope your priorities are to our other initiatives as DAC. And so specifically, we would like the final budget decisions to align with those higher value categories: mental health resources, teacher compensation, per pupil funding, interventions for at-risk, instructional support. Then we wanted to get a little more specific. So a little more specific than that is we really want even the highest priority to be meeting the needs of the students who, especially in the past 2 years, are just really struggling. So that would be like ultimate priority. And then we had some feedback from our DAC to be even more specific, as a very specific idea. And this was just some general feedback from our DAC members in our final meeting. And this wasn't something that was specifically discussed with individual SACs or schools. But one pretty common idea that has come up, that was raised throughout these discussions, was the idea of having more paraprofessional support. So, and then this goes to those two confusing questions, but it also really points to a lot of the comments that we received, is that they just need more support. And we have had a lot of people in our last DAC meeting talk about how, well, at one of my schools, the paraprofessionals really help the mental health side of things, because if somebody needs to leave a classroom, they can go and watch this kid, and you don't need to call the assistant principal down to walk Joey down the hall. And so there's a lot of ways that we can be looking at how to provide them the support. So one of the recommendations is to look at, is there a way to provide increased paraprofessional support to our schools to meet some of these greater needs? So that is really the first bullet point there in a long-winded way. Secondly, we have had a lot of tough conversations. We know it's a challenging topic, and we've listened to your board. Many of us have listened to these conversations at the board meetings. We truly believe, in order for our students to be getting the best experiences possible, we need to look at if their school can provide it to them. And a number of the comments said, our school is so small, we just can't we just feel like we're not providing the experiences we want to provide to our students. So I will be honest, a lot of the DAC members were pretty surprised to see those comments. We didn't think that would be coming from the schools, but it was. And so one of the recommendations is to adopt a student focus and equitable school closure consolidation policy and plan. And specifically with robust community engagement and transparency. It's a very difficult issue. We hope that those pieces will help with the process. Third, review and revise the student-based budgeting process. We know that initiative is, I don't know if it's already kicked off or soon will be kicking off to review that process. A number of the comments say the SBB process is really hard for us to work with. And so we would, those comments coming from the schools. And so we would also ask that as a part of that process, there be a component or suggest that there be a component where the principals are engaging in that review and having an opportunity to say what is working and what's not working, because we don't have that level of detail when we get the comments back. Let's see. Fourth, we believe that our budget decisions should be aligning with the Jeffco Thrives 2025 strategic planning process. So we feel like everybody likes what we're seeing and want to make sure that decisions all across the board, particularly budget decisions, are being made with all of that in mind. And we had a great presentation from the Financial Oversight Committee, and we felt very strongly that the idea of multi-year financial planning is a great idea. And I've met with the CFO and think that it would be really helpful to have more of a multi-year planning. And we also think that can help with community engagement to have a multi-year process. And then last, review and revise DAC and SAC budget feedback opportunities. This gets to mostly our survey. And what we would like to do is, again, a lot of our meetings have taught us that we should be, at least this year we've learned that we should be working on this much earlier on in the year. We understand that the budget process is complicated. You don't always know what you're getting from the state until much later in the year. But if we want feedback and we want to really dig into things, we need to start this a lot earlier. And we also would like some more advice and information on how we might be able to improve the survey. We are, as a DAC, would like to not work with the survey company that we worked with this past year because it was very difficult, and we're missing information that we really wanted to have. So timeline and learning how to continue getting the type of feedback that is helpful to you is what we would like to learn. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Laura. So now we're going to open it up for dialogue and whatever questions or comments or whatever we can answer for you. And so.
Great. Thank you all. And from the entire board, I'm sure every one of us will say it. Thank you all. This is an enormous lift for folks, especially when you start new and the data dump is like extraordinarily, if you're on DUIP, that's the one I know. It's a little overwhelming. So thanks for the time that you're dedicating to all of our kids. So, and I apologize, Superintendent Dorland, I'm going to catch you first of all off guard. Second of all, I forgot to ask you at the top of this hour if there were any remarks that you had, and so I'll ask now if there's anything you wanted to share before we open it up for dialogue with the board.
Thank you, President Schooley. Welcome. It's really nice to see you all and to hear all about all of the amazing work that I know you've been doing. I'm fine. I might chime in at the end with some context, but I think I want to give the board time to engage in conversation.
Great. Better late than never, so I say. All right. So, board, this is our opportunity to have conversation, ask questions, any comments we have with our partners on the DAC. Is there anyone that would like to begin? Ms. Parker.
First of all, thank you guys so much for all the work you're doing, especially when I see what I'll say old timers whose kids graduated with the dinosaurs. I think it's really wonderful that you stay involved. So thank you all. My question is, when I hear the SAC presentation and the recommendations, the surveys, I've attended some meetings. I never hear any discussion of achievement scores or anything like that. Is that something that is intentionally not part of the SAC meeting focuses? I know DUIP cares about it, but is there any link with the just general SAC meetings?
Well, what I can tell you, Ms. Parker, is that maybe you missed a meeting because they talk about data. It's all about timing. And when the timing comes, the data comes out, I have to tell you, Dr. Carol Eaton, and right now we're working with Renee Nicothodis, those women are amazing. And when they do the data dump, when they talk about what the data is and how we can improve student achievement and how we can, what areas, when we worked with the content experts, we were all like, oh my gosh, there's so much. These are not easy things, but we do want to look at the achievement data. And we look at it in our committee for fall, mid-year, and then at the end of the year. And then, if we're lucky, when CMAS comes back, because we want that to inform our report as well. This year it's been tough. I will tell you that. But every month it seems like we're looking at more data.
Sure. So when we look at the data, they break it down male, female, free and reduced lunch. I mean, there's 25 categories they break it down to, and they'll say this one went up, this one went down, and our goal then is then we go, what are the root causes? Why is this happening? I mean, we dig so into it. We're just being really top line right now today. It's crazy how much we dig into it, but Carol Eaton breaks that data down so good for us that we can really understand it. If you can read a chart, you can do it. And I will add that I'm really, really happy that the strategic plan is prioritizing early literacy, because I think that is going to make long-term all the difference. Because I feel like I've done this for 4 years and we keep talking about reading scores. And I know we had COVID, but we just keep seeing this, So that's all. But we do definitely dig into that a lot.
And I just want to let you know that every time they share the test results, and because we have to review that for the DUIP, I always ask questions, because I know that when I sponsored the law for accountability, we were supposed to be focusing on growth. And so a lot of times the data that's given to us is not given to us that way. It's like last year's third graders and this year's third graders. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to look at this year's fourth graders and how they did last year as third graders to see if the kids are growing. When you just compare this year's third graders and last year's third graders, they're not the same kids.
Yeah. Typically, we would have that data in this report. Given the shift in the DUIP material, we have, our mindset is that we've kind of separated the two. So they have that data in, with their reports and that kind of thing. And then we're somewhat doing the rest at this point in time. So yeah, typically that data would be included in this recommendation, but it's a little different now. So yeah. Okay.
We do have plans to have some independent analysis of SBB, and I'm wondering if there are specific things that you would like to see come from that review and specific revisions that you'd like to see.
I'll give you some thoughts that I can recall from the comments. There were comments that talk about the challenge of see if I remember all the right terms, the just right factor, I think we call it. Is that the right term? Where schools, is that right? The just right. Size factor, right? The just right balance, the size factor. I'm mixing my the size factor. So we have schools that feel frustrated about, like, if they're within a certain number range, they may be giving money back. So that's a challenge. We have also saw some comments regarding how schools wish that the AMP, art, music, PE, was not a part of student-based budgeting, because if you have a smaller school and you're sharing with multiple schools, it just really changes the feeling of AMP and what those specials feel like for the kids. So there were a couple of comments on that. And a lot of the comments didn't get real specific, but I think some of the other things that we've heard over time is that it just feels, it just never feels like it's enough money. So I think everybody's kind of in agreement on that, and we can't just go ahead and change what the state is giving us. We got to work with what we have. But I would say that as DAC, the idea that DAC discussed with respect to SBB was to have the principals who are in the building, who are working on the budgets and trying to make it work, be involved in the process. They are going to know far better, well, most of them anyway, will know far better than any DAC member that I'm aware of, other than the 2 DAC members that we have that are principals. So I think that was the big takeaway there. But it was just, the formula is not working for us. And so beyond that, we don't have a lot of specifics to share.
I just want to add on to your comments, because one of the things, and Miss Miller unfortunately had to go, but she sent me a couple of her comments as well, so her voice can be included in here. But reading through the comment section, so not just around the size factor, but some concerns around, so there's the loss of the Jeffco remote learning program students that were sort of still woven into school's budget. That's not going to happen. We have lower Title I counts in schools because we had free food. That's one of the reasons why. So a couple of schools, some schools lost title funding. We have had attrition of students that we don't know where they are. We do know where they are. They're just not in the same schools where they were. So then the total SVB is down. And then we have these upcoming sort of literacy and math resources that I think there are questions around. Who pays for some of these things? Is this coming out of SBB? That is, as a package, I think is a lot of anxiety that's happening in school communities, because these factors, it's not just one. It's a lot of factors. And for some schools, it's all of those factors. So I do think there are conversations as a board we need to have, and around, like, for example, for the literacy and math resources that we are approving, if that is our strategic plan priority, how is that funded? How are we making sure that schools have equitable access to those resources to be able to meet some of those root causes that you mentioned earlier, Lori? So I appreciate you elevating those things, and I think they came through in the comments pretty loud and clear. Board members, we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get every minute that we can of questions and comments. Other questions, thoughts?
Thanks for being here. It obviously feels great when you all are here. The SAC is where I started my work and interest in schools, and until November, I was the chair of our SAC committee. So this all feels really close to me, I think, and so I just really, from the parent perspective, I was thinking about some of the things you were presenting on, the resources for SACs. This year were really good. I went to the training every year for the SAC chairs and our principals. And this year we got this slide deck that then I was able to take to our SAC and share with them. So that was a really great resource, I think. And then recruiting is super hard. Our principal would always say, it's like inviting someone as they cross the street, the crosswalk, to come. So, I think your ask that we kind of help encourage at that level is smart. And I know I'll work on that, at least in our area. We have now that I'm part of Moore Middle School, the Principal Fletcher does the pop-up SAC. I don't know if any of you all have seen this. She does it on their community family meal night. They do family meal, I think once a month. And she says, like, surprise, we're doing SAC. But it's amazing. She shows all their data. She's very transparent. And so the, 50, 60 people in the room all hear it. So it's creative. It's a way. I don't know if it counts as a SAC, but anyway. So, and one other comment for the charter schools, I really agree with you that, like, right now, especially, is a really important time to share and talk together. And when I was doing my charter school visits, and I will, I think next week, when we're talking about regional opportunities and the way that we're thinking about consolidation, I think it's important that we learn from each other and think about how we make sure any kid, no matter what school they're going to, is getting all these opportunities. And what charters are doing can be innovative or different. So I think we have a lot to learn, and we can. So I appreciated you thinking about that and mentioning it. Sorry, I'm going to run through these. Stephanie's always like, President Schooley is always giving me the eye. I'll just say two things on the quality of, the quality of the survey rates is going to determine how much of this. And I had fun. I like talking about that. So thanks for inviting me to that meeting. I just had two quick questions. I think, so on question 25, I think it's that one where you said the results were hard to interpret. It's that one that says, like, if you have to make these top priorities, what goes on the bottom? We just have to redo that question. And I think starting with saying, like, what do we want to learn from it? And it's probably confusing because it's confusing for us to be like, wait, why would I give up anything? Like, why, like, if you put something on there as number one, it pops up as the number one thing you're, like, willing to give up, and nobody feels that way. So there's something really funky about that question. So making it hard to interpret. I'd love to keep thinking about that. I like designing surveys. I just had a quick question on question 28, which said, which of these are your priorities? Sorry, let me find it really quick. And the top one was mental health, and then teacher compensation, per pupil funding, and interventions. And I just wondered, something like school safety wasn't on there. So is that just a choice that we made not to put that on there as a priority for funding?
So we in the past have had like 20 questions. Oh, yeah. I don't know, can you hear me? And some of the feedback that we got was, that's just too much. So we were trying to kind of zero in on what we think are the biggest concerns. So okay, that's pretty much why.
Yeah, it's that problem when we don't ask them, then they don't pick it, so it doesn't rise to the top. Right. Okay, two last quick things. On our mental health work, I think it comes up every year as number one. Is that what you said? And well, I have a general question for you, like, how do you think we're doing, like, addressing that as number one? And just to add a little context, like this week I was at Little, and they were talking about have they maintained with their Title I funding their JCMH counselor who serves over 40 kids, 40 families. And we were walking around, and I was like, oh, there's an office, the JCMA office, and I just was like, and I know that they themselves are short-staffed, but I thought, this is amazing that this is in the school. Go ahead. So
I think each school is doing it a little bit differently. And in part, that's great because different schools have different needs. But another thing we learned through the comments was, we really need more. There was a school, and I think it was maybe had some center programs, might have one of the comments might have said, we have this many kids on IEPs or whatever it might have been. I don't know the details, but they said, we need more. We need more. And so I think there's always improvements to make. I will say one of the conversations that we had in our DAC meetings, it came up in a couple of the meetings, and it's not in our report. We were trying not to get too lengthy, but is to really drill down on what do mental health supports mean, and do we want to start maybe there's a whole nother question that we need to have in our survey about mental health and have some specifics Are we talking about, students that might fall within different categories? Are we talking about staff, or like what are we talking about? Are we talking about behavioral health? Are we talking about depression? There's just so many, and that might be something that an expert in the area could help formulate how to ask that question to get you all the information that you need. That would probably start leading us down the path of understanding how are we doing.
Yeah.
And I understand our chart of accounts are probably a barrier to this, but like I would love to know what % of our budget funds mental health. I have no idea. And I don't know, and I know it's different, and some cases it comes out of our SVB, but I learned from our CFO this week on our telehealth contract for $1 million, it says we can provide the telemedicine service that we're contracting for to the 69,000 children in our kids in our district, if that was utilized in that way. And I thought that is a great investment, and not as shocking as some of these other numbers that come into us, So that's why I asked how you think we're doing, because I don't know. I can't tell how well we're doing.
Over the last 5 years, it has come in as the number one recommendation from the schools, and so we've presented it as such, and from where we were 5-6 years ago, our district has done leaps and bounds towards that, and so I know we as a community thank you for that. I mean, it's enormous. To dig deeper to see now what that means, I think is real important. But we have been doing well. Now, when the pandemic hit, it put a whole new level on this, and so I think we're seeing a bit more. The needs are a little more deeper and different, and so. But as a whole, I think the district is moving in the right direction, and we want to thank you for that. So.
I'll just add a little context. One of the things we did do this year, which is new, is get a baseline survey data from this new tool that we've implemented, the SSIS Cell Survey. And we reviewed the results of that survey data with the board. Of course, to Ms. Varda's point, Dr. Varda's point, sorry, we don't have any growth data to know, or a second year of implementation of that survey to know if some of our supports for mental health are working, but we now have a baseline and we can track and monitor, and at least we have some data that can give us an indication of our progress and where we might need to channel more resources going forward.
What survey is it?
Okay, just real quick. Oh, SSIS Cell. Mm-hmm. So what I wanted, Ms. Avery, I know you had a comment to make as well, and just to say that, and you sort of alluded to this, that thanks to the voters, we were able to devote quite a bit from the mill levy from 2018. So we are grateful to all of you wherever you are. Okay, Ms. Avery.
So I think the last 2 years we feel like we're 5 years because it just seems so long. But I started DAC 4 years ago, and I do remember very well because I was so new and it was so exciting to me. The number one thing that actually came in 4 years ago was teacher staffing, closely followed by security. And my guess, this is only my guess, but I think it's important for you guys to think about, is with COVID, there's been no school shootings. So it's off people's radar. But we're coming back, so I don't think it's something we should take off radar. But I think it just by the natural events, it's.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
So-
there was something, if you look at, and I don't remember the exact question, but if you dig deep into the data, it seemed like all the middle schools said that they had concerns about behavior. And if you know middle school kids, that's obvious, but it was reflected in the survey.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, we're happy to stay longer if you want to extend, but yeah.
I wish we could just hang out. We do have to reconvene somewhere else, so I don't want to mess with people's schedules, and we appreciate the time that you've given. I just want to say, to make sure, when you mentioned the training and bringing together the now I'm looking at which note. The articulation area meetings that you were talking about, please invite board members. Please,
Good reminder.
send us invitations to that, or just be sneaky and find someone to put it on our calendars, and then we can say yes or no later. But I think that those kinds of efforts, are really important, and that's part of what we're here to do. And B, help support our entire previous hour's conversation around how do we more consistently show up and be able to listen to and understand some of these dynamics with our articulation areas, with our communities more broadly. So for any of those things, for the SAC training or for the AAR meetings, please invite us to come and be part of those, because we're going to say we all really want to go and do that, and we'll see what kind of looks I get for that. Yeah, Carson.
No, I mean, as when we're towards the end, just let me know. So.
We're towards the end.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I just want to thank each and every one of you guys, and this is volunteer for the board as well, and I've been here a very, very long time. I'm all about Jeffco, and I've seen things change and grow, and I believe it's very, very refreshing to see Superintendent Dorland come aboard, and she is a true believer in the community engagement and in respect. And so I think some of this, what we are talking about tonight or this afternoon, I know we are adding some positions, and I think that will help in terms of digging deep and making those face-to-face supports to bringing people in, and it's exciting to see, and certainly I know that from a DAC's perspective, we talked about this, and there's lots of support for that, and we hope that continues, and I think that is the true foundation of how we are going to get out there to the people of Jeffco and beyond, and really pull them in. And so thank you for your support in that, and thank you, Ms. Dorland, for that as well. And
I'm going to grab the mic because there's something that came up that didn't fit into any of these categories. And that is, I attended a DAC retreat from another school district and listened to recommendations for how DACs function. And one of the things that they said is that it would be helpful for the DAC, or at least the executive committee, to meet with the board twice a year, once at the beginning, so we have a conversation about what are your goals and priorities and what do you want us to concentrate on? And then one toward the end of the year like this, where we can tell you whether we've fulfilled those goals, and just to, instead of just having a board member come and talk at a DAC meeting, we need a little more substantial interaction between the DAC and the board.
Thank you for that, Senator Hudak.
Yeah. And then one last thing. I want to send out a special thank you to Dan Cohen. Dan has been an incredible support to this committee. He is retiring this year. And, we really want to thank you, Dan, for everything you've done for us. You've been the calm in some of the storm and the reason when we don't have it. And so thank you so much for being a part of this. And we welcome you back. So
now you can just volunteer on DAC.
That's right.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, exactly. We'll appoint you. Done. Thank you.
Yeah.
It sounds like we've got some follow-up steps. I mean, a lot of them. There's a lot that is here, but in order to maintain and strengthen this connection, be able to help you all do your work in a way that makes more sense, and that we can do our work in a way that is in the best interest of all of these little people and big people that are in our district. Superintendent Dorland, before we close this out, is there anything else you'd like to say? All right, well, we extend our thank you to Mr. Cohen as well, in addition to you wonderful people and the folks that you wrangle to get all of this information to us. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Board members, we're going to take a break from our meeting. It is now 5:08. When we return, the only item we have is an executive session. So I'm going to see if we can call the motion now and have it captured for the official record for our public notice. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
I move that the Board of Education moves into executive session to discuss specialized details of security arrangements, including the status of security in our schools and measures being taken by the district staff to promote school safety and protect staff and students pursuant to CRS 24-64024D.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. It has been moved and seconded to move into executive session to discuss specialized details of security arrangements pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024D. After the vote to move into executive session, the public portion of our meeting will end. The board will reconvene in open session at approximately 8:30 p.m. to adjourn our meeting from the DeAngelo Center. Roll call, please, Ms. Neal.
Ms. Miller is absent, so Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Ms. Cooley,
Yes.
Dr. Varda.
Yes.
Board members will take a break now to attend the Jeffco Economic Development Council celebration of Congressman Perlmutter. Thank you.